From this day forward, we no longer recognize Madeline as part of this family. She doesn't reflect our values. She never did. She was a mistake we endured out of obligation, not love. This was the most painful moment, and the turning point for me. The rejection was no longer implied. It was declared openly and deliberately. In that instant, I realized I wasn't the only one who'd ever been quietly erased from the story of their own life. If you've ever been disowned by the very people who were supposed to love you, or stood alone in a crowd that was supposed to be family, stay. This story is for you. Because sometimes it only takes one person speaking up to start rewriting everything. The sun spilled over Harvard Yard like it had something to celebrate. Rows of folding chairs gleamed under a blue sky, and camera flashes glittered like confetti. Parents milled about with floral bouquets and overpriced gift bags, their faces flushed with pride. Laughter echoed under the elms. I stood alone, just inside the main gate, clutching nothing but my breath. There was a time when I imagined standing here under very different circumstances. I had pictured myself with a seat, a name, a rightful place among the lineages, smiling for the university photographer. But that was before everything turned. I walked slowly toward the welcome tent, almost hoping there had been a mistake. That somewhere in the lineup or on the seating chart, I had simply been overlooked, not intentionally removed. My shoes sank slightly into the grass as I stepped closer. The sign read, "Reserved seating, the Carter family." Underneath, in ornate script, Vivian, Charles, Olivia, plus 2 guests. I scanned twice. No Maddie. Someone handed me a badge, plain white, no emblem. Just the word guest, printed in Times New Roman. The irony hit like static. I had once helped design the family crest, a minimalist hawk in flight, flanked by branches of laurel. We argued for a week about typography. In the final version, the C in Carter curled slightly like a question mark. I remembered because I'd sketched it on the back of a placemat at a diner. Now, 20 years later, I was an uninvited answer to a question no one wanted to ask. The pin dug into my jacket as I clipped it on. A woman in pearls smiled vaguely at me, the way people smile when they can't quite place your face but think they should. From the crowd, I spotted them near the front. Vivian in sky blue, her smile sharp and weightless. Charles checking his phone, the way he always did when reality bored him. Olivia stood between them, robed in crimson with cords tangled at her throat. She looked radiant, not just because of Harvard, but because she had been chosen. Again. I approached slowly. My heart wasn't racing. It was shrinking. Vivian turned first, her eyes scanning like I was part of the landscaping. "Oh," she said, her voice clipped and polished. "You came." "I got the invitation," I replied, keeping my voice flat. "I assume it was forwarded." She gave a tight laugh. "Yes, well, sometimes things slip through." She didn't offer a hug. Charles didn't offer a word. Just a nod, like checking off a box. Olivia opened her arms. I leaned in. The hug was brief, a reflex. Her whisper brushed my ear. "You look amazing," I said, automatically. "Thanks," she replied, her voice soft. "I'm glad you're here." But her eyes flicked toward our mother, calculating how much warmth was safe to show. The procession began. I was seated far left, between a sleeping elderly man and a toddler chewing on her own program. Cameras clicked. Applause rolled through the tent like gentle thunder. I tried to disappear into the folds of my blazer. Then Charles stood. He straightened his blazer and stepped to the microphone like a senator preparing to filibuster. "Today," he began, "we celebrate the brilliance and dedication of our eldest daughter, Olivia Carter." Polite applause. Olivia looked down, a perfect picture of grace. Charles continued, his voice rich and rehearsed. "But this day also marks a turning point for our family, a necessary shift in values and focus." I stopped breathing. "We've made a difficult decision," he said. "From this day forward, we will no longer extend ourselves to those who do not reflect the values we uphold, including our youngest daughter." Silence. Even the toddler stopped chewing. A rustle of programs, a gasp from somewhere in the second row. I didn't move. I didn't cry. I felt every cell in my body clench around itself. No one looked at me. Not directly. I turned my head slightly, enough to catch Olivia's profile. Jaw tense, eyes locked on the grass beneath her feet. I wanted to scream. But instead, I let the silence stretch like a rubber band. The speech moved on. Something about legacy, about pruning branches to protect the core. I didn't hear most of it. My heartbeat drowned it all. When it was over, the applause returned. Olivia walked across the stage, her smile dimmer than it had been at rehearsal. I stood not because I couldn't take it, but because I'd finally decided I would. I wasn't forgotten. I was erased. And the difference between the two is sharp enough to bleed. Rain tapped softly on my kitchen window, polite as regret. I hadn't changed out of my dress. The hem pooled around my feet like a ghost still clinging to ceremony. The guest badge sat on the counter beside my keys, a white square that hummed with everything unsaid. I stared at it too long. Eventually, I picked it up and dropped it into a drawer. The silence in my apartment was thick but familiar. It always came back louder after family events. I powered on my old laptop. Not the one I used for work, but the one that still held digital debris from a time when I thought my name mattered to them. Its screen flickered to life, casting a pale glow across the room. Blue light. Cold. The kind that drains warmth from faces and memories alike. I didn't have a plan. Not really. But some part of me, deeper than rage, needed answers. The email account took a minute to load. It was the one I used when I did volunteer bookkeeping for the Carter Foundation. Before they brought in consultants and told me my tone in donor emails was too casual. Folders, labels, a sea of unread messages. Then I saw it. Holdings, updated click. Inside, a single PDF. Transfer. Authorization, Bar Harbor, final.pdf. My heart stuttered just once. I opened it. Legal jargon spilled across the screen, property line definitions, signatory blocks. At the bottom, a signature beside a printed name, Madeline Carter. But it wasn't mine. The S loop in Madeline was wrong. The downstroke on the C curled like Vivian's handwriting. It looked like someone trying to mimic confidence, but missing the rhythm. I opened a drawer and pulled out my old lease agreement, laid them side by side. My real signature next to the forgery. They didn't even try hard. Then I checked the metadata. I knew where to look. I'd done IT support at a nonprofit before grad school. Created April 22nd, 2024. Author, secretary at carterfoundation.org. IP address, 192.6.4.3.77. I froze. That wasn't a consultant. That was Rachel Lynn, Vivian's personal assistant. She once brought me a macaron box for my birthday. I remembered because she spelled my name wrong. Twice. My throat tightened. I clicked again, back to the folder. Another file. Trust reallocation memo, confidential.x. No surprises this time. Just a timestamp. Just a confirmation. My inheritance, my name removed, rerouted, repackaged under simplified succession planning. I picked up the phone without thinking. It rang twice before Aunt Ruth answered, her voice wrapped in sleep and worry. Maddie? I found it, I whispered. The Bar Harbor transfer? They forged my signature. Silence on her end stretched long enough to hurt. Then, oh baby, I was afraid of this. You saw it? I didn't want to believe it. Your mother told me it was just to clean up the estate. Said you knew? I didn't. I figured, but I also figured it wasn't my place to stir things. You were a witness, I said gently. To the original will, right? Yes. Her voice cracked. I have a copy somewhere, the one Elise signed before she passed. It named you. I closed my eyes. For a second, it was like hearing my grandmother's voice again. She had always called me her sharp one. She knew I'd need proof, I said. They've been trying to rewrite you for years, Maddie. The words cut deeper than anything my parents said on stage. We stayed on the line, just breathing, until the rain thickened into something steadier. Not a storm, just a reminder that time kept moving. After we hung up, I didn't cry. I opened a legal pad, made a list, and started drawing lines between names. They erased me with silence. I'd reply in ink, and not the kind that fades. The sky hung low and colorless above Somerville, bleeding a thin drizzle over everything. My coat absorbed it without complaint as I stepped into the coffee shop near Beacon Street, the bell above the door chiming like a tiny, reluctant witness. The place smelled of espresso and wet paper, and every seat seemed taken by someone trying to outrun their own morning. I spotted her near the back. Aunt Ruth, wrapped in a beige raincoat, her hair in its usual no-nonsense twist. She clutched a manila envelope like it might turn to ash if she loosened her grip. I slid into the booth across from her. "You came," I said, not quite a question. "I figured I owed you at least this much," she murmured. Her eyes didn't meet mine at first. "I should have said something years ago. I knew what your mother was doing. Maybe not the details, but the intent." I nodded, not to absolve her, just to move forward. "Do you still have it?" She reached into her oversized bag, hands shaking slightly, and pulled out the envelope. "This is the copy of Elise's original will," she said. "The one she signed 6 months before she died. Your name is on the Bar Harbor deed. Plain and binding." I took it. It felt heavier than paper should. "She gave it to me because she didn't trust your mother to keep it safe." She didn't say it outright, but Elise always knew Vivian was more interested in the image than the truth. "Thanks for holding on to it," I said, my voice even. "Now I plan to make sure someone else sees it too." She reached across the table, touching my wrist. "Be careful, Maddie. Your mother fights dirty." "I'm not scared of her anymore," I said quietly. From there, I headed straight to David Langford's office. He had been our family's tax attorney once, back when our family still included me. Now he served as legal counsel for nonprofits and people trying to untangle old lies. His receptionist blinked when she saw me. "Miss Carter?" "I have an appointment," I said. It wasn't true, but she didn't challenge me. David looked up as I entered his office, recognition tightening his jaw. "Maddie," he said, "didn't expect to see you." I placed the folder on his desk and sat down. Inside, the original will, the forged Bar Harbor transfer, the metadata files, voice memos from Foundation prep calls, a handwritten list of names, dates, contradictions. "This," I said, "isn't about winning. It's about correcting the record." He flipped through the pages in silence. Then he leaned back in his chair and sighed. "You have more than enough for a civil challenge, possibly a criminal one." "She used Foundation resources to push a private agenda," I said. "And they forged my signature. That's not just unethical, it's fraud." He nodded slowly. "They won't go down quietly. Neither will I." We worked through options, legal strategies, filing orders. He agreed to help me build a preliminary case, quietly, while I pursued another angle. That night, back in my apartment, I drafted an email. It went to a name I hadn't typed in years, Janelle Rivera. She had been part of a scholarship pilot program I helped design when I was 23. I'd reviewed her essays, personally interviewed her. I remembered her drive, her curiosity. She had gone on to become a journalist. Last I checked, she freelanced for a few nonprofit watchdog outlets. The email subject line was simple. "You once said if I ever needed a voice, you'd lend me yours." Attached was a redacted packet. Summaries, evidence lists, one clipped audio recording, and a quote from Elise's will. Not enough to burn down a legacy, just enough to light the match. I printed the hard copy and slid it into a crimson velvet envelope, one of the old gala sets, embossed with the Foundation crest. I sealed the envelope in crimson velvet, just like the ones they used for gala invites. Only this time it carried facts. The next morning, my inbox buzzed. Subject line: Carter Foundation scandal, confirmed sources needed. They built their empire on image, and I was never part of the picture. The ballroom glowed with soft golden light, polished floors gleaming beneath the weight of heels and money. The Carter Foundation's annual gala was always a performance, not of generosity, but of perfection. Chandeliers sparkled like they were under contract. Waiters flowed between tables with military precision. Every guest was dressed like they'd walked out of an editorial, because here aesthetics were currency. I entered through the side valet entrance. My dress was simple, black, deliberate. It didn't beg attention, but it didn't disappear either. The name tag clipped to my coat read M. Carter. That single initial was both reclaiming and weaponized, a declaration stitched in restraint. They couldn't erase a middle initial. I moved through the room like smoke, nodding to people who didn't quite recognize me, or pretended not to. That suited me fine. At the center table, Vivian stood with a flute of champagne and the poise of a seasoned performer. Charles hovered beside her like a coat rack with an opinion. Olivia lingered just behind them, her smile brittle under the glare of flash photography. I caught her eye for a second. She looked down first. Dinner came and went in courses no one remembered. Speeches began. Applause punctuated by polite laughter. When Vivian took the stage, the room quieted instinctively. "Tonight," she began, "we honor not just the work of the foundation, but the future it represents." Her voice was smooth as marble. "And of course, we celebrate our greatest legacy, our only daughter, Olivia." A ripple moved through the tables like a misplaced breath. Olivia blinked, unsure whether to smile. I kept my eyes on the screen behind Vivian, a slideshow of photos cued to play. I recognized some of the events. I'd worked on the first one. My name had been on the initial proposal. It wasn't now. A guest 2 tables away pulled out their phone, maybe bored, maybe curious. I saw their face shift, eyebrows lifting as their fingers moved. Then they turned their screen to a friend. Then another. Someone laughed. Dry, nervous. And then, like a spark catching dry brush, the headline appeared. A VIP had connected their phone to the projection feed, probably to share a gallery or app. Instead, the browser took over the screen behind Vivian. Exclusive. Carter Foundation's charitable legacy under scrutiny. Internal memos, missing air, forged signatures. The room froze. Vivian faltered. We... More phones lit up. A growing murmur spread, shifting the room from reverence to unrest. Then came the quote, bolded beneath the subhead. "We only use Olivia's face in the marketing. The other one doesn't photograph well with our narrative." Astria, Vivian Carter, Private Donor Prep Meeting, 2023. Another slide, Bar Harbor property sold without air consent. Metadata suggests internal forgery. My glass remained untouched. Charles stood but said nothing. Olivia paled, blinking furiously. Vivian adjusted the mic as if clarity could fix collapse. But no one was listening to her anymore. The room wasn't hers now. It was mine. I stood from my chair, quietly, without drama, and walked toward the exit. No eyes followed me. They were all glued to the screen, to their phones, to the crumbling image of a curated empire. As I passed the last table, I felt it. A glance. I turned slightly. Olivia was staring at me, lips parted. She looked like she might speak, but then she didn't. I walked out through the main entrance, heels steady against marble. For once, they had to explain without me there to blame. My phone buzzed as the automatic doors hissed closed behind me. Gregory Hughes. "We need to talk. First thing tomorrow." The courtroom didn't look like justice, but that day it sounded like it. The walls were the color of dust, and the carpet carried the scent of decades. Dry, tired, institutional. No soaring arches, no dramatic gavel strikes. Just fluorescent buzz and the soft shuffle of papers, jackets, breath being held. Massachusetts State Court looked like any other bureaucratic building in America. But that morning, it was a coliseum. I sat beside David Langford, my attorney, both of us bundled in our arguments instead of armor. Across the aisle, Gregory Hughes adjusted his tie for the third time in 5 minutes. Vivian and Charles sat behind him, composed, rigid, quiet in a way that made my skin itch. Olivia was there too, 1 row back, her hands folded tight, her gaze fixed on her lap. She hadn't looked at me once. "Court is now in session," the bailiff called. I exhaled slowly. David stood and approached the bench. "Your Honor, we respectfully request that Exhibits A through E be entered into the hearing record." The judge, a woman in her early 50s with a calm, tired face, nodded. "Proceed." He laid the documents out methodically. Exhibit A, a certified copy of the original will, Elise Carter's signature crisp, Ruth's attestation clear. Exhibit B, a notarized affidavit confirming the will's chain of custody. Exhibit C, the forged property transfer, with a comparison to my verified signature. Exhibit D, metadata printouts showing the origin of edits, traced to Foundation servers. Exhibit E, audio recordings, short, sharp, unforgettable. Gregory raised a hand. "We contest the authenticity of Exhibit E." David cut in, calm but surgical. "The voice recordings were captured during Foundation donor briefings, not under duress or deceit. Voice pattern analysis confirms both speakers." The judge nodded. "We'll allow it." The courtroom speakers crackled. First, Vivian's voice. "We only use Olivia's face in marketing. The other one doesn't photograph well with our narrative." Then Charles. "She used to read everything. We need to be careful what Maddie finds." Silence followed. Brittle. Pressurized. I glanced toward Olivia. Her posture cracked slightly. One hand rose to her temple like she could wipe the words from her ears. "Call your first witness," the judge said. David stood. "We call Ruth Carter to the stand." Ruth walked slowly, steady, a quiet hurricane in beige wool. She raised her hand, swore her oath, and sat. "Mrs. Carter," David began, "do you recognize this document?" She looked at the original will and nodded. "Yes, I witnessed it." "Is this the same document your sister, Elise Carter, signed before her passing?" "It is. And in that document, who is listed as the beneficiary to the Bar Harbor estate?" She didn't even blink. "Madeline Carter." I felt the air shift. Not move, break. "Were you aware of a later version of this will that omitted Miss Carter?" "Yes," Ruth said softly. "I was told it was for tax purposes. I was not asked to witness it." "Who told you that?" "Vivian." The judge leaned forward. Noted. Gregory tried to recover. Questioned the timeline, the motivation, the significance. But the foundation had already cracked. David returned to his seat and glanced at me. "Ready?" I nodded. The judge looked over the materials again. Then she spoke, slowly, each word a small, deliberate weight. "This court finds that the original will submitted by Ms. Carter is valid and binding. Accordingly, the Bar Harbor estate is to be transferred to her, effective immediately." She paused, then continued. "Furthermore, given the evidence of document forgery, metadata manipulation, and internal misconduct, all current operations of the Carter Foundation are hereby frozen pending audit. The Foundation's financial records are to be referred to the Office of the State Attorney General for further review." Gregory slumped. Vivian went pale. Charles rubbed his temple. Olivia didn't move. The judge banged her gavel once. "This hearing is concluded." People began gathering papers, zipping bags, whispering behind hands. I stood and turned toward the aisle. Vivian brushed past me without ceremony. But as she passed, she hissed, low and controlled. "You think this makes you whole?" I didn't flinch. My reply was steady, final. "Number?" But at least it makes the record true. He handed me a badge made of paper and glue. "Because you showed up," he said. The light filtered through the old windows of the renovated library, soft and honey-colored. Outside, the branches of a maple tree danced in the Rhode Island breeze. Inside, the room buzzed, not with media, not with money, but with the rustle of sketch pads, laughter, and the quiet wonder of kids who knew what it felt like to be overlooked. The plaque had just been mounted at the entrance. It was small, bronze, subtle in its defiance. In memory of Elise Carter, for the granddaughters they erased and the ones who refused to be. I had read the words 3 times before I let go of the screwdriver. The art center was nothing like the Carter Foundation's galas or the Bar Harbor estate with its varnished railings. This place smelled like glue sticks and possibility. It had taken nearly 6 months to transform the old municipal library into a sanctuary for teens aging out of foster care, for girls who'd never been in a family photo, for kids who didn't know legacy could be something you built instead of inherited. There were no reporters, no speeches on polished podiums, just a mismatched row of folding chairs, a table of cupcakes, and a dozen kids whose faces lit up when they spotted their own art hanging on the walls. I kept my words short. This place isn't about me. It's about the ones who never had a voice. Now they do, and walls to put it on. Applause wasn't thunderous. It was warm. Enough. Later, I lingered in the back, taking it all in. The squeak of markers, the girl in purple who painted suns in every corner, a boy balancing a glue bottle on his forehead. They weren't waiting to be told they belonged. They just did. One of them approached me. A boy no taller than my shoulder, front tooth missing, confidence unshakable. "This is for you," he said, holding out something folded and taped. I took it carefully. A badge, made from cardstock, marker, a torn ribbon. My name, Maddie, spelled in crooked capital letters, outlined with gold glitter pen. I smiled. "You made this?" He nodded. "It's a badge for important people, like teachers, or astronauts, or builders." "Builders?" I asked. He grinned. "People who build places like this." I knelt, letting the weight of it land fully. "Well, I think this might be the best badge I've ever had." I pinned it to my shirt, over the place where the Carter family crest used to sit. Later that night, I returned to my small office tucked in the back of the building. On the desk, a plain envelope. No return address. Just my name, written in Olivia's neat, slanted script. Inside, a single page. "You were right. I'm sorry it took this to see it." I didn't cry. I didn't reply. I folded the letter and placed it in the lockbox under my desk, beside the old white guest badge and the gala envelope I once used to carry proof. They didn't feel like wounds anymore. Just history. Footnotes. Outside, a girl read her poem aloud, her voice trembling, then rising. I closed the drawer and listened. I didn't need their crest anymore. I had a badge that mattered. The story didn't end with thunderous applause or a dramatic curtain fall. It ended the way real justice often does. Quietly, firmly, with truth spoken in rooms where it had once been silenced. No headlines could fully capture what it meant to reclaim what was stolen not just in ink or inheritance, but in identity. The courtroom didn't grant closure. It granted recognition. And sometimes that's enough. For years, she was treated like a footnote to someone else's success. Her face cropped from photos, her name removed from plaques, her value measured against an image she never fit. But when the truth came to light, when forged signatures were exposed, when whispers caught on tape turned into undeniable proof, everything they had built on control and curated perception began to unravel. They could no longer hide behind perfect speeches or branded legacies. The erasure had a cost, and this time, they were the ones left speechless. Her revenge wasn't loud or cruel. It was measured, deliberate. A velvet envelope, a courtroom filing, a quiet gala disruption that left them explaining themselves to a room full of donors and silence. But more than any of that, her justice was in the choice to let go. She didn't chase apologies. She didn't seek to destroy what they had left. Instead, She built something of her own, an art center for voices like hers, for those who'd never even had the chance to be forgotten because they were never seen in the first place. What this story teaches isn't just about betrayal, it's about the slow, patient courage it takes to confront it, to collect the pieces of a name they tried to erase and build something lasting. Because when injustice is met with unwavering resolve, the outcome isn't just reparation, it's transformation. No wall of lies can stand forever against the tide of truth. And perhaps standing up today means you'll never again have to bow to injustice tomorrow. Some victories don't roar. They hum through the bones, soft but unshakable, like a badge made of paper and glue, worn exactly where shame once lived.